you're buying a home in Chicago, some of the homes that look like the best deals online can cost you the most after you move in. And I'm not talking about some obvious fixer-uppers. I'm talking about homes that show well and look affordable on paper, but come with costs that most buyers don't see until it's too late. So today, I'm walking you through 6 types of homes here that can fool you online, and for each one, how to spot it before you buy and when it's still worth buying anyway. And make sure you stick around for the older lakefront building, because that's where I'll show you how a beautiful condo with an amazing view turned into a $60,000 special assessment surprise. If this is your first time here, I'm Dee. I lived in Chicago for 27 years. I've been helping people buy and sell homes here for over 20 years, and I walked through thousands of these homes. So let's start with number one. Number one on my list is the garden unit. And let me just be honest about what that actually is if you haven't heard that term before. Garden unit is a nice way for us realtors to say basement apartment. So it's basically a unit that sits below ground level, and on the paper it looks great. It's the cheapest way to get into expensive neighborhood. You can be on the same block as the multi-million-dollar Greystones for literally a fraction of the price. But here's the catch: water. The unit sits below ground, so it's the lowest point of the property, and when we get those heavy rainstorms, that's where water tends to go. So you can have flooding, seepage, backups, and you get that damp smell. It's really hard to get rid of. And in the winter, these run cold because you're partially underground. So if you're looking at a garden unit, here's how to check before you buy. Start with a drainage. You want a working sump pump, ideally with a battery backup, so it still runs when the power goes out in storm. Then ask whether there's an overhead sewer or backflow valve. That's what stops the city sewer from backing up into the unit. Ask the seller for any history of flooding, and during attorney review, ask specifically whether there has been any insurance claims on the place. Because if there was water and they file a claim with an insurance company, there's going to be a record of it, and the seller is a lot less likely to try to hide it. And look at the floors and the baseboards. If you see hardwood down there, that really makes me nervous. Most people won't put hardwood in a space that might flood, and if it looks warped or buckled, it usually means water's been in the unit. So when is a garden unit a smart buy? When the drainage been run right, price reflects the trade-off, and there's been no prior history of flooding. Plenty of people own the garden unit and love it. Number two, living right up against the L. Now, this one may not hand you a repair bill, but it can cost you when the time comes to sell. When you live next to train tracks, it can be noisier, and if you're a light sleeper, that can be a real factor, especially if your bedroom faces the track. But the city of Chicago has spent the last few years modernizing tracks and adding sound barriers, so the noise may not even be the biggest issue depending on where you're buying. The bigger one is the vibration. You actually feel the train go by. So how do you check for it? Stand in a room that faces the tracks when a train goes by, and go at rush hour. Check the windows too. Good soundproof windows help with the noise, but they do less for vibration. So when is it okay to buy this? When you personally stood in that room and it didn't bother you, and the price reflects the trade-off. A lot of my clients stop hearing it within a week. Just know that when it comes time to sell, it can turn off buyers that are sensitive to noise, but if the price reflects that, it can be a good way to get into the neighborhood without paying the premium price. Number three, you've probably walked past it hundreds of times and never known it could be a problem, and that is a split face block. I'll show you exactly what it looks like on the screen, because once you see it, you'll start noticing it everywhere. You mostly see it on a 3 to 6 unit buildings that went up in the late 90s and 2000s, and a lot of builders still use it because it is a cheaper building material. It's a cinder block with a rough split face, and here's the thing that matters. Cinder block is porous. It soaks up water. So if it hasn't been sealed right, water gets into the block and into the wall. That can cause leaks, mold, and of course, expensive repairs. And here's the part that most people don't know. Split face block has to be resealed every 5 to 7 years to keep the water out. It's not a one-time fix. It's an ongoing maintenance. And on a 3 to 6 unit building, that's somewhere around a couple of $1,000s each time. So I'm not saying it's automatically a deal breaker. It's a maintenance item. The problem is the buildings where nobody kept up with it. So here's how you check it. Look for staining that's running on the side of the building, crack or missing sealant between the blocks, or spots that have been patched over and over. Ask when was the building last sealed, and get an inspector who knows Chicago masonry. If it's kept up and sealed recently, that is totally fine. You just need to know that this needs an ongoing maintenance, and in a lot of these self-managed buildings, that is just not the case until there's a problem in one of the units. Number four is the one that hides highlights in the older homes, the ones with all the character, it's old mechanicals. I love a gray stone or a 1920s bungalow. That character is a huge part of why people move to Chicago in the first place. But behind the finishes, you can have a furnace from the 1980s, wiring that hasn't been updated since the house was built, old pipes, and a water heater that is on its last legs. None of that shows up in a listing photo, and these can turn into a major bill. And if several of them are old at the same time, you can get into a five-figure territory very, very fast. So here's how you protect yourself. And this is simple. On an older Chicago home, you never skip the inspection, no matter how competitive the market feels. Get eyes on the furnace, the electrical, the plumbing, the roof, exterior, and the sewer line, and ask for the age of every major system. An older home where past owner already did these updates can be a great buy, but one where nobody's touched the systems but just painted the walls, installed new cabinets and countertops, and made it look pretty just to flip it, that is a whole new renovation project on top of your mortgage. You just have to know which one are you looking at. So don't be scared of the old house, just be careful and know what you're buying. And if you haven't met yet, I'm Dee. I've been helping people buy homes in Chicago for more than 20 years, a lot of them moving from out of state. I also put together a free buyer's guide with the exact inspection and due diligence checklist I use for every one of these types of homes. It's free. The link is in the description, so just be sure to grab it before you leave. Now let's talk about number 5, because this is the one that catches people moving here the hardest. Number 5 on my list is the aging high-rise building. Picture it, a high-rise from the 1970s or 80s, right on a lake, incredible views, price per square foot that looks like a steal next to a newer building. It feels like a very easy yes. But a building that age eventually hits a point where a lot of big things wear out: the exterior facade, elevators, heating and cooling, windows, plumbing risers, which are those vertical pipes that run all the way up in the building. And in many buildings, especially in Lakeview neighborhood along the lake, where you have a high concentration of them, these can be original to the age of the building. When a building that size needs major work and hasn't saved enough for it, the owners get hit with a special assessment. This one building, and I'm not going to name the address here, but I'm happy to share if you message me privately, finally had to replace plumbing risers. On a 2-bedroom, that came to around $60,000. Smaller units paid less. We're still talking about tens of thousands for pipes that you can't even see. Now, a lot of these owners had been there for years, so they have some equity built into the units and they could handle it easier. But the people who bought in a year and a half before it hit, if they didn't look at the building finances first, they had absolutely no warning, and now they're dealing with this massive special assessment. So that's the situation that I want to keep you out of. So here's how you protect yourself. Before you fall in love, ask for building's reserve study. That's the report that shows whether it's actually saving for its future repairs or just scraping by. Read the last 2 years of board meeting minutes and look for a mention of any words like facade, elevator, engineering study, risers, and a special assessment. And then have your attorney ask in writing whether any special assessment is planned or even being discussed. Having an amazing view is great, but it's definitely not worth $60,000 special assessment surprise. And if you want to go deeper on the money side of all this, watch my video on the hidden cost of buying a home in Chicago. I cover transfer taxes, property taxes, closing costs, all the numbers behind buying a home. I'll link it right here. Number 6 is the building warrantable. Here's what that means. For most people to get a regular conventional mortgage on a condo, the building itself has to qualify, not just you. If one owner owns too many units, if there's an ongoing litigation, or if the reserves are too low, the building can lose that status. And when the building isn't warrantable, buyers can't get a conventional loan to buy in it, which means that it can be only sold to cash buyers. So that means when you go to sell, your pool of buyers automatically shrinks, which can obviously affect home values. And starting 2027, buildings are required to put 15% of their budget into the reserves to be eligible for loans. If they don't, that can affect their warrantable status. So here's how you check it. Get the full set of condo documents and ask straight out, is the building warrantable? How much is in reserves? Is there any litigation? Is there any structural issues in a building? And how many of the units are owner occupied versus rented? A warrantable building with healthy reserves is exactly what you want, and it's a lot easier to sell down the road too. So before I let you go, the one thing that protects you more than anything on this list, keep some cash in the bank after you close. Do not put every single last dollar into a down payment. So if something comes up, a sewer line, an assessment, a furnace in the middle of winter, there's nothing left to handle it. So check everything we just went through, then keep a cushion, because in these older buildings, something eventually potentially could need attention. And if you're buying in Chicago in the next 6 to 12 months, subscribe and hit the bell. I put out a new video every week. And if you want a second set of eyes on a specific building before you make an offer, that is what I do. You can book a free, no pressure consultation. The link is in the description. I'm Dee Savic. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.